Civil society groups have threatened Parliament with legal action over the Electoral Amendment Bill. Previously, the Constitutional Court found that the Electoral Act was unconstitutional since it did not allow independent candidates not linked to any one of the political parties to participate in provincial or national elections. Neeshan Balton, CEO of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, joins us now. Of course, the foundation, one of the many groups standing together on this. Mr. Balton, welcome to the show. So the Constitutional Court said go back to the drawing board. Just tell us what has happened since then and why you don't like the bill in its current form.
Well, thank you very much. What has happened since then? The Constitutional Court judgment came out in June of 2020. For almost a year, Parliament did nothing. Then the minister appointed an advisory committee. That advisory committee came up with two possibilities for reform. One was a majority opinion view, and there was a minority opinion view. The majority opinion view said to the minister, take the local government system that has wards as well as proportional representation votes and apply that to national and provincial government. So you have 400 members of parliament, 200 voted directly by voters through constituencies or wards, the equivalent of wards at provincial and nationally. And the other 200 will come from the political parties and the candidates that they put up. What the minister chose to do was to ignore the majority report, was to go for a minority view report that simply said accommodate independence, but the independence will stand almost equal to that of political parties. So if I was standing in Gauteng, I'd have to stand across the whole of Gauteng and compete with a fully fledged political party across the whole of Gauteng itself. But I would also need more signatures to be able to participate, to register. I probably need more money to register as well. And I'd have to have a huge infrastructure to campaign across the whole of Gauteng. What this does, I think it makes a mockery of the Constitutional Court's ruling and doesn't really bring about a parliament that is accountable to the people, which I think was really the substance of their decision.
So independent candidates will be allowed to contest, but you're saying that the barriers for them are so high that it's as if they don't count anyway.
It's incredibly high. It will almost be impossible for them to participate unless they have huge resources and are backed by millions, if not billions of rands in order to just participate. But they would be participating on a very unequal footing in the first place.
Yeah. Could they not focus on one community and get a lot of votes in that community and really make a showing by doing that anyway?
There are no communities. You contest across the entire province. And that's precisely the point. If there were to be communities or constituencies, which is what a whole lot of us thinks works better, it makes accountability greater, it increases the possibility of greater accountability and makes parliamentarians, like the clip that you've shown here, it makes that constituency representative more aware of the issue, and they have to take up that issue irrespective of what the party view might or might not be.
All right, we've been following this, and one of the contentious issues along the way was also, what if an independent candidate stood and gained enough votes to get one seat in Parliament, but then gained a whole lot of extra votes as well? Where would those votes go? And Musi Maimane was suggesting a sort of a collective box then of these votes that were shared amongst other independent candidates. There are some global examples. What does the bill say right now?
Well, essentially what the bill does in the end of the day is it reallocates those votes to mainly political parties, and then it's the bigger political parties who would stand to gain more than I think the smaller ones, or even against any other independent candidates. But I think that that's the complexity of this system. It does mean at the end of the day, there are some votes that probably won't matter at all, and I don't think will add value to our democracy. What that results in is precisely the disillusionment and disappointment that the clip that you showed beforehand would come into, which already means that in the last election, more people who could have taken part in the elections chose not to do so because they felt that this democracy wasn't working. Its parliamentarians were not accountable to them, were not forcing the executive or government to make the kind of changes that were promised. And hence, voting almost becomes meaningless for many of the voters and citizens of the country.
Yeah. I mean, the ward system at a national level, would that represent a fundamental overhaul of our system currently? And I guess even if you don't talk about independent candidates, but you talk about the parties, would it force the politicians to have an ear on the ground and to be more present in those communities partitioned by wards and be on the ground?
It certainly should. It certainly should do that. If there are recall mechanisms built into it, as well as monitoring mechanisms for citizens, and compulsory voter contact and voter interaction sessions that politicians or members of parliament should have been doing through the current constituency offices. But those constituency offices primarily play a party political role. And they also spread out at the wish and whims of the political party itself. So a constituency should have a fully fledged constituency office, should have parliamentary support staff, and even if the parliamentarian is not there, there should be skilled and trained staff there who could then deal with the issues of that constituency and make sure that those issues are championed by that member of parliament, irrespective of whether or not that political party supports that kind of issue. Yeah. So it's the issues of voters and citizens that must count first and foremost.
Mr. Balton, final question. We're running out of time, but some have called for a direct vote for a president rather than the president being elected by the winning party. What does the bill say on that right now, and what do you say?
The bill doesn't deal with that. We think that this is an idea that needs far more discussion, deliberation, and research. At this point in time, it's part of what we think would have to, that the country would need to deliberate on. The campaign and the foundation does not have a view on it because we think that there is much more work that we need to do to understand the full implementation and the significance of this for our democracy. Yeah. What we are focused on now is what Parliament is currently dealing with.
Will you take the legal route finally before the bill is passed, or will you let it be passed and then presumably it will have to pass tests of constitutional muster in the future?
So the bill has to go through a process that I suppose Parliament is trying to complete by the end of September. We are told that it must still go to the NCOP, and the NCOP must still undertake public consultation. If they avoid that route, that means it goes to the president for his signature, and thereafter would come into law. If it, in our view, if it doesn't pass the kind of constitutionality test, which we don't think it will, then obviously it's going to be challenged. It's not the route that I think many would like to go because it would impact on the time frames for the holding of the election. But I think at the end of the day, if it fails constitutionality, and if we don't think it fundamentally improves the quality of our democracy, then many in civil society would consider that option.
All right, and this really is a fight to ensure that there are independent candidates running and that they provide a real option to voters. Thank you very much, Neeshan Balton, CEO of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. Let's take a look at